Hi, welcome. I'm Mary Long, founder of Her Story Network. Thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to be speaking with Siri Strommen, a very, very favorite guest. She is the pastor of Atonement Lutheran Church in Bloomington, Minnesota.
Yes.
Bloomington, Minnesota. We love having Siri on, and everybody loves listening to her. So thank you for joining us. This is our first show back after a holiday break, and there's a lot going on, a lot we want to talk about. The kind of I was telling Siri the core of it. Let me take these glasses off so they're not reflecting. Self-love, and when for me that always sounds kind of like okay, I love myself, but it really is the core of everything. And I kind of want to get into all these different things that are happening in the world and within us that actually come back to the most important thing in the world is that we love ourselves. And by loving ourselves, I don't mean getting your nails done or getting a facial or going out with the girls for a glass of wine, even though all that stuff is helpful when you do things that you love to do. That's self-loving. But I really want to get to the core of why we are so well trained to reject ourselves as women and think of ourselves as lesser than, and why it is such a struggle to remember how to love ourselves. We really don't have to learn. Babies are born. They love themselves. They cry when they're mad or they need something. Most of the time, they're just happy. If they look in a mirror and see themselves, they kiss themselves. I'm not even going to say society because it's absolutely worldwide, have been sadly trained to reject ourselves. Part of that core, most religions, is we are filthy, dirty, full of original sin when we're born, and we have to spend our life atoning and cleaning ourselves up, which is really a bunch of BS. It keeps a lot of people in really powerful positions with a lot of money in their pockets. Absolutely not true. So there's a couple of things I wanted to jump off with. Sorry about the ums. So there was an interview that kind of broke the internet. The last time I saw it, there was like 50 million views. It's by a comedian named Cat Williams. And I'm not really going to talk about the interview because it's really addresses Black comedians and a world that I know nothing about and have no business speaking about. But he said something I really loved. He said it's 2024 and it's time for truth telling. And he told a lot of truths as he sees it, which is why he broke the internet. So I like that. It is 2024. It's time for truth telling, and it's time to be honest about what is really driving our society, and more specifically for us as women, as females, and why it's so difficult for us to really love and accept ourselves as we are. I have this, the Barbie movie, which most people have seen.
Yeah.
There might be a handful of people who haven't seen it yet. America Ferrera has an amazing monologue in there that people have talked about. Most of you might have heard it. It's worth repeating. I'm just going to read it here. It is literally impossible to be a woman. You are so beautiful and so smart, and it kills me that you don't think you're good enough. Like, we have to always be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane. But if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood. But always stand out and always be grateful, but never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard. It's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault. I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us. And if all of that is also true for a doll just representing women, then I don't even know. And I think that says a lot right there in a nutshell. I love the part where she says, but also everything's our fault.
Yep.
Even when we get sexually assaulted, we take that on ourselves as our fault. And tying into one current event that's happening is it looks like the person who is going to be the GOP candidate for now. I always say we are in such unprecedented times. Neither of these two people on the Democratic or Republican side could end up being the people we vote for next November. Who knows what's going to happen? But so far, it looks like this one particular person who used to be in the White House is going to at the very least, be their candidate. He won. They just had the Iowa, and they say as Iowa goes, so goes the country, which is BS because that really hasn't been true for quite a long time. But it is saying something, and I think what it says more than anything is that as women, you can do whatever you want to us. Beat us, you can sexually assault us, you can pay us less than men, you can verbally abuse us, you can do whatever you want, and we will still stand by your side and support you because we have been so well trained at how worthless and second best we are that a man can come forward and say, I sexually assault women. We all heard him say it was recorded while this other little titmouse laughed while he said it. And 24 women can come forward and say, he does do that. He did it to me.
Yep.
And since the last time we talked about this, he has been convicted in a court of law of at least one count of sexual assault of E. Jean Carroll. And it's understandable if the patriarchy, which is pretty much all of the world, not just our society, but wants to support that because they want to stay in power. But it's such a telling sign of how poisoned we have been to our own worth that millions and millions of women are like, yeah, sexually assaulting us isn't a deal breaker. It's not a deal breaker. And people may say, as they have when I've you're leery about getting in discussions that have a political bent, but to me, this isn't political. But when I do bring this up to people, they say, oh, well, that's all, there's an excuse for everything. That's manipulated media, like he didn't really say that or whatever. And we're also then, I guess, just going to dismiss the 24 women who said that he assaulted them. But I just lost my thought where I was going with that. But I don't know that there's a better barometer of gauging how well trained we are to think so little of ourselves that sexual assault is not a deal breaker. And this is why I wanted to talk about self-love, Siri, because it's been the key to everything for me. I believe that it is the key to freedom for all women, is learning how to love themselves. And, I have been on this journey since I was really young, for decades. How do I get better? How do I love myself? How do I be more spiritual? How do I be more whole? Why does my life not look the way I want it to look? Why am I always putting up with all this shit I don't want to put up with? And I was trying and self-help with books and readings and retreats and all that kind of stuff. Not that any of that stuff doesn't help, but what I have found is helpful for me through all this time. I am just now starting to be my own advocate. When I say something critical of myself or whatever, to stop myself and say, don't say that. I don't agree with that. I'm not going to let you do that to yourself. And the most important thing is, we talked about this at the show before Christmas about how women I think they make the whole world spin round. But certainly make the holidays wonderful. Everyone loves the holidays. It's women, doing most of the heavy lifting, decorating, baking presents, all that kind of stuff. If we look at our lives, most women are Herculean in what they're doing. A lot of them are working full time. They're raising families, taking care of their kids, getting them to soccer practice, getting them to the dentist appointments, being parts of their community, being parts of the school, PTA, room mothers, all this stuff that we're doing. And it's never good enough. It made me realize this is something that I've been doing lately. I might have mentioned this once before, but the things that I criticize myself for, I give myself no credit for. I saw them in the same way when we're sexually assaulted, we take that as a shame on ourselves.
Right.
This is where I was going when I lost my thought before. When they say that that's all planted, I can tell you, I personally know many women, because I always say I believe women. Come to me, tell me your story. I will not reject you. I will believe you. I know women personally who have been sexually assaulted the entire time they were growing up by family members, and they support this man. That tells you how, and as a survivor myself, I understand how we internalize the shame when we are sexually assaulted, whether it's by a stranger, neighbor, friend, or whatever. And society supports that. What were you wearing? Were you drunk? Whatever. So we learn to dismiss our own pain, and we take on the shame of others as if it's some kind of sacred duty or something, which is really sick. And I've mentioned this before. So probably aside from the sexual assaults and other things, so I got pregnant. I got pregnant at my senior prom. Talked about this before. Raised my little boy by myself till he was 3.5. And then I met a wonderful, wonderful man who became the father to him and our daughter. But it was always a source of shame to me because it was very shameful. You want to say, well, that was then, but it's not like people, unless you're a movie star or someone rich and famous, nobody applauds a young single girl getting pregnant. Okay. It's just not something. But I got a job. I got a car. I got an apartment. Well, my parents gave me a car. I should say that. So that was definitely a big help. Apartment, full-time job, all this stuff. I worked by myself to raise that little boy as a teenager and a very young woman. And it's only recently that I can say to myself, that's not something you should be ashamed of. That's something you should be proud of. That took a lot, but we're not trained to say, good job. We're not trained to say, holy Moses, you're a single mother and you're working full time and you're just loving these kids. And maybe one of them has a drug addiction and you're trying so hard to find help for them. All this stuff we're doing, we are just trained to believe we're failing because we're second best from the moment we're born. And I go back to this all the time because I believe it. The foundation is religious. It's very hard to argue with God. And when people tell you God says you are here to serve man, well, what odds do you have of changing that? So anyway, I do believe it's a deep core issue. And I think I've said a million times, I believe the healing of this world is going to come about through women. But first we have to heal ourselves. And we have to do it together. We got to talk about these things. We have to reach out to each other. Turn off the reality shows where the whole hook is females fighting.
Yeah.
Other reality shows that are all about looks and youth and big boobs and smooth skin and people saying that they would literally eat poop if it would make them look younger. This doesn't well for us. Honestly, walk away from that stuff. It's not feeding your soul. Do things that feed your soul. And I've talked long enough, Siri, so let's have it. I know you always have really, really wise things to say. So what are your thoughts on women and self-love?
Yeah, so many thoughts. One of the things I began to formulate my own perspective on this several years ago was when I came across Brene Brown. But I started, even before I came with her work, I started to figure out there was something wrong with our definition of like original sin and, and humility and pride and, it just didn't sit well. And then something really clicked when I read her work. about shame. And all of a sudden it dawned on me that one of the things we're talking about in religion a lot are symptoms, but we're not good at actually looking at the core of what the problem is with humanity. And I think at our core, we're terrified that we're alone and we're worthless. And so in the process, we try to find the things that we think make us okay and worthwhile. And that could be belonging to the right tribe. That could be belonging to the right religion. That could be amassing power and wealth. And I really think one of the reasons why we have like people who are proud boys and things like that is deep inside, they are terrified they're worthless. And they at least are a white man. So they may have nothing else going in the world for them. Maybe their dad beat them up their whole life. You know, they've been told they're a piece of crap, but they're a white man. And you take that away from them and they're terrified because then what do they have? And so I think that there's so much in our world where we have had men trying so hard to hold on to their power just because they were born male. And that gave them an innate sense of being okay. And they have not become right with themselves. And so now as women are starting to realize that they're innate, I'm not worthwhile or I'm lesser because I was born a woman or something like that, starting to wake up from that lie, it's threatening because deep inside, there's like this core part of us that comes from God, right? Comes from the universe. And that deep part of us is worth the same in every single human being. We're all the same. We're all equal. We're just born in completely different bodies having this amazing life experience. And that part inside of us loves ourself, loves everybody, has an amazing capacity for courage and forgiveness and power, but it's buried underneath all this cultural conditioning and these messages that tell you what makes you worthy and what makes you unworthy. I mean, I'll tell this story for you that was like every once in a while I have these powerful aha moments where I see the tape, the cultural tape that's playing in the back of my head. And this was quite a few years ago. I was doing some work with the Muslim community in Minneapolis, getting to know them, doing interfaith dialogues. And there was one time where I walked in, it was like a busy gathering, and I had the thought in my head, aren't they so lucky that me, a white Christian, is making time for them? I was like, oh my gosh. And then that's when I started to use the word Christian supremacy, this idea that because you're a Christian, you're supreme over other people who aren't. And no one ever told me that. That's certainly not the way I grew up, but that's the way the culture talks about things. And so somehow that had weaseled its way into me that in certain circles, I had worth because of my Christian or pastoral identity. And so I really had to deconstruct that a little bit and really start thinking about what is my worth really. And the other thing I will say, and I just wrote about this recently on Facebook, is that the word humility has often been used by men for men and often against women and marginalized communities. But for men who've literally been kind of kings of the planet, you know, born into positions where they got to say what careers they wanted and what to do, and women's only choice was wife and mother. For them, it was like this aha moment to realize that their worth doesn't maybe come from that. And so they humbled out and hollowed out and like divested of the things that gave them power before. Well, great. That's masculine spirituality. That works great for people in power. But when you have people who have spent thousands and thousands of years carrying the genetic DNA that you're supposed to be quiet and good and everything's your fault and blah, 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 blah. What we need to find our deep inherent worth I believe, is to find that our power and our strength has nothing to do with what other people think of us. And so we're claiming like this dragon, glorious goddess power that's deep inside of us that comes from that self. And it's not selfish. It's not arrogant. It's not rude. It's not greedy. It's glorious and empowering for you and for everybody else. And that's just something we don't see a lot of. We don't talk about. I think we're going to see more and more of it from women as women discover their inherent value and break free from more and more and more of the internal chains that we've been cultured to adhere to. Um, and I'm still deconstructing. I'll still have a thought where I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I'd internalized that. Oh my gosh, I don't want that anymore. It's this ongoing lifelong journey of like freedom, really finding your worth and finding true freedom in your soul to the point where no one can control you. No one can make you think, feel, or do anything you don't want to do. That's true freedom. And that's what I want.
Yeah,
And it's
oh,
good
that's
for
so
me and it's good
beautiful.
for everybody else.
Yeah, it's really, really beautifully put, Siri. I love listening to you. You have a way of putting things so beautifully. I do agree. During a meditation some time ago, I was actually on a women's weekend and some crazy stuff was happening. I was having a hard time with. And during this meditation, I did get the words that be cautious that the desire for spiritual superiority does not masquerade as concern. And I think that's a
Ah.
lot of what's going on right now.
Mm.
And the reason I really want to talk about this stuff is because, first of all, I'm very concerned people are going to stop inviting me to parties because at 2 holiday parties over Christmas, I got into discussions with men about, and even women about, how gold diggers, women, they say they've been sexually assaulted because, they want the fame and the glory that comes because you
Oh,
see
yes.
just
Glory.
hold these women up on pedestals when they
Oh,
come forward
right.
and say they've been
Mhm.
assaulted. And it's just so obvious to me that
Mhm.
there are only two genders on this planet. There's male and female. Aside from all the other, the binary, I'm not dismissing them. I'm just saying when you're born, you're identified as one of those two.
Mm.
I'm open and accepting of all other ways people identify, but let's just start there. And from that point, before we're even conscious of a thought, we're absorbing the fact that as female, you are lesser than.
Mm.
As female, you are here to serve. I actually read this really interesting little paragraph by this person that was writing something, and they said she was talking to this man, and they're expecting their first child. And he said, I'm actually hoping that it's a girl because I know then whatever siblings come after that, they'll be nurtured and looked after and cared for. And she
Mm.
said, wow, isn't it amazing? Even before we're born,
Yep.
we're expected to serve others. And this starts with religion. And I think that's why it's so entangled, because most of us have some kind of desire to know God or whatever God is, a spirit, whatever. And so
Mhm.
we follow what we've been trained to believe is true. And this is the biggest question that I think really starts unlocking things for women is when we start asking ourselves, is this something I've been trained to believe is true?
Yep.
Even when it comes to religion, I'm, as we know, mentioned a million times, I come from a Catholic background, 12 years of Catholic school, taught CCD, was very enmeshed in my religion. I believed it. I knew it was true until something started happening in my life and I started asking questions and I realized I actually don't know any of this stuff is true. I'm kind of just following what for centuries, people have said it's true, what all the people I know and love say is true, and I want to be part of that group. So of course, it must be true that I'm going to go that this is true. And this is why it's so important that females start stepping out and finding different ways to be spiritual, to connect with our true self, because it's scary to do, because the vast majority of people we know do believe in some kind of traditional religion and never question why they believe it. Why do I think this is true? Why do I think that is true? Is it true for me? Let me sit quiet and really think about this for a while and take some time and meditate on it. Is this just me keeping the status quo going and never wanting to rock the boat? Because I've been trained to be a good little girl. Good little girls don't rock the boat.
Yeah, I got to tell you, so this fall and winter in my little Tuesday morning Bible study that I do at my church, we decided we were going to read through the letters in the New Testament because someone had recommended that. They thought that'd be interesting. There's all these letters, you don't very read things straight through very often, even in church. And so we started to do that. And I just felt this like anger as we were reading so many parts, and I didn't pull any punches. I would read a part and I'd say, this is crap. I'd say there's a beautiful passage right here, and that's the ones we read on Sunday and write hymns about. And then the next 30 verses is patriarchal bullcrap, or it's patriarchal, or it's so clearly based for a certain community in a certain time with certain concerns, but suddenly we're supposed to universalize it. Like, it's so obvious it was written by a particular person in a particular time, and we're supposed to carve our brains and intelligence into, first generation Palestine thinking. No. I just got like really angry. I was thinking how much of our theology and what Christians believe they're supposed to think about Jesus in the world doesn't actually come from Jesus himself at all. It comes from later generations of men's writings and men's postulations passed down by men for men. And it just was making me really, really frustrated. And I thought, what we don't talk about nearly enough is how in every interaction Jesus had with a woman, it was ridiculously feminist and radical, and everybody around him didn't know what to do with it. They were freaking out.
Him. So they killed him.
So they killed him. Absolutely. But he was like, every single interaction he had with a woman, he talked to her like an equal. He spoke to her, he allowed her to speak. He had theological conversations, and women followed him. Why would women follow a man? Unless maybe, just maybe, he was saying something that made them feel freer with him than anywhere else in their life. And this all gets lost under these singular verses that people pull here and there that's like, women should be silent in church. We don't want to talk about the context behind that, the fact that most women weren't educated and couldn't read. And so maybe they ask kind of dumb questions. And so we don't want to talk about that was just a singular community, or just the fact that they were sexist idiots back then. We want to take that singular verse out of context and say, this is what God thinks about women for all time. And it's bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. And we'll ignore 4 gospels worth of stories where Jesus goes to women first after he rises from the dead and says, I want you to be the ones to see me first. I want you to be the ones to tell everybody first. You get to be the first pastors. Guess what? We can have a future church of egalitarianism. And then the men go, nope.
Right?
So,
It's so crazy.
I'm working as a pastor in the church, and yet I'm still in this process of weighing what I learned to get my degree, and some beautiful good things there. And yet at the same time, realizing how limited that was, and how a lot of it was like just passing on certain patriarchal messages we didn't even realize we were passing on. And I'm still shedding those. and I still love Jesus for who he is as an amazing human being. And I'm wrestling with, like, as I'm coming into my worth and I'm deconstructing all this religious stuff, balancing that with still having faith, still being a believer, still connecting. It's this powerful energy that I think is moving through the planet of people trying to figure out where to land.
I agree with that 100%. There is absolutely a shift going on. My personal belief is it's the divine feminine reemerging that has been buried inside of us for so long because it was so unacceptable.
Hmm.
What I've come to believe is, this always makes me kind of a little weepy. The the incredible love and non-judgment that I've experienced at times in quiet meditation is so unlike the God of my religion or any religion that I'm aware of or have had experience in. There is, there's no judgment, condemnation. It's like this, whatever it is, God always has so many, too much baggage with the word, but whatever it is, it's just like, stop.
Yeah.
Stop doing this to yourself. You are perfection,
Mhm.
absolute perfection. And when you say, you said something just a second ago that really struck me. Oh, about with males and females. And this is the thing that we have to really grapple with and come to terms with. And it might be a lifelong thing. It is for me. I work at this really hard. And all the old tapes, like you said, with, oh, aren't they lucky I'm here? Because we're a white person, white women. We've been trained a certain way. That's not our fault, but it's our
Right.
responsibility to question
Absolutely.
those trained beliefs in
Yes.
religion, in society, in whatever it is. That's part of being a grown adult woman saying, okay, I have
Yes.
been trained to believe this.
Yes.
Let me examine it and
Yep.
see if this is actually true or something that is not only good for me, but good for the whole.
Yeah.
That's it. The one thing I am not saying is we have been victimized. We have to say, I'm not a fan of skipping over whatever injustices have been done to anybody. Those have to be brought in the light and looked at. However, living life as a victim and just replaying all that stuff, that doesn't help either. We have to be honest, look at it and say, okay, I was victimized. I was victimized many times in my life. Just about all women have been. But it's my responsibility to heal that and question what I believe about it, question what people have told me is true about it, and see if there's not another way to look at this.
Mm-hmm.
When you said the male, this is what I always think of with males and females and the Bible and what we're taught our role is imagine there's this uber wealthy husband and wife that own everything. They own the world. There's actually some people that kind of are that way now, the way we've set these corporations in this world up. But anyway, and they have 10 kids, 5 girls, 5 boys. They die in a plane crash. They don't leave a will that anybody knows of. However, say many years later, when everyone's trying to figure out how to continue the family business and keep making all this money, all the boys come forward and say, we found a book Dad wrote. And he wrote what he wants. And he said he wants us to be in charge. He says the girls are here to help us do what we're doing. And they can get some money, but we're in charge of everything. That's the way Dad wanted it. Wouldn't everybody go, you're so full of shit?
Yeah.
Obviously, this is you guys wrote this. Whatever your little musings are, you added your own stuff. Maybe part of it the dad wrote, but you really stacked the deck. So you guys are in charge of everything. You're getting the lion's share of the money. You make all the decisions. You're in full power. And you've just made your sisters here to serve you. That's pretty much what's happened with certainly Christian religions and the Bible. And I'm going to turn this over to you in a second, but I just have to say once more, especially looking around at politics and religion. There is no greater testament that religion has completely lost its way than the fact that who religions are pushing, people who will stand by and watch a woman and her 2 young children drown because they're trying to cross the border. They shouldn't try to cross. If that's where you're at in your life, where you can hear of grown men standing and watching a woman and her 2 children drown in a river because, hey, they didn't belong there. Wow.
Yeah.
I honestly, my heart breaks for you because you obviously know nothing about being loved, loving yourself, or loving other people. And there is absolutely nothing Christian about that. So if your idea of Christianity is screw those people, they don't belong here. I don't care if women suffer. I'm holy, so I'm going to make sure every baby is born and then deny school lunches, feeding them, healthcare, whatever it is. I don't even know where to begin. All I'm asking is take a good long look at Christianity today, and it is as unlike Christ's teachings as just about anything you can get.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I say is that Jesus did not come and call disciples to worship him. Did he ever say, okay, this is the time where you bow down and write songs about me? Like you don't ever see that. He
No.
says, follow me. And the point of a disciple was to follow behind and to mimic what the master and the rabbi was doing and mold yourself into their way and glean from their wisdom. And so there were, yes, women and men who followed Jesus. It wasn't just 12 dudes. It was a lot of people, and they were there to watch the way he saw the world. And he saw the world fundamentally in ways in which he saw through the story. He'd look at a person and he knew all of the, well, they're a leper, they're a Gentile, they're this, they're that. He knew how the world saw them. But he always saw straight through that to the equality of their soul, the child of God's self. He saw right through that. And then he wanted them free and well because that's what compassion and love is. And and so people were constantly shocked by him because he didn't play any of the games of the world. And so isn't that what a Christian's supposed to be? Is to wait, to see, to try to like understand, how did he see people? How did he see himself? How did he see the world? And instead we've turned it into a religion where we wave our hands and talk about the blood of the lamb. And I don't see it making any difference in this world in that regard. The only difference, positive difference Christians have ever made is when they have felt that love turn on in on themselves and that love for other people break their heart, and they wanted to fix things. And that's had definitely happened all over the world. It's happened, and it's still going on. It's just that's what it is about. And I also, going back to self-love, I believe Jesus loved himself, and I believe it is the birthright of every human being to be proud of themselves and to love themselves and to laugh and to find joy. And then they turn around, and when they're so full of their love of self, they turn around and they've got so much to give. And a lie we've been taught, this like being puffed up and prideful and selfish, that's more about the ego. That's more about like, well, if I will be good, if I will be okay, if, well, I've got the degrees and I'm the right color skin and I'm the right gender and I'm this and I'm that, I'm that. So now I'm worthy and I'm going to lord it over other people. That's egoic pride. But real soul pride is feeling good about the work you're doing in the world, using your God-given gifts. And then once that's going, like you don't need anyone else to do or say anything for you. You've got that furnace of love in you, and it's going to naturally want to help other people because it's a mature love. It's a mature pride. It's a mature understanding of compassion and love. That's what we need. Is we need maturity. We need healing. We need compassion for ourselves. So, yeah, when people say selfish, I think they're just not understanding the real problems of the world, which is that antagonistic me only, which is a very kind of male dominated belief. Um, and it's very greedy and hoardy and, all by myself in my little castle. Yeah, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. But that's not where we're going as women if we heal ourselves. That's not where we're going. To be full of our deep core beautiful self, radiant, is nothing but a good thing because it's going to shine on everybody else as well. And
Amen.
yeah.
And not just that, but when you do start feeling that switch, you just want to pour it on to everybody else. It's like a natural thing. It breaks my heart to see the way women treat themselves and talk about themselves. I mean, you go out to lunch with women, how many of them will talk about their fat ass or how old they look or
Mm.
make fun of how dumb they are or whatever? It's really heartbreaking, but it's so common. This is acceptable. That's acceptable. Talking about that we love ourselves and are proud of the things that we've accomplished, there's a fine line there. Just don't do it too much. You know,
Right.
right? Yeah, you can say it, but not too much. And I'll tell you the honest to God truth, what I have learned in my life is the people that brag the most about how amazing they are the people that are the most insecure and they don't have
100%.
self-love inside of themselves.
100%.
Because when you have it, you don't have to talk about it.
You're
You're just
secure.
it. People can tell by the way you behave. You don't, anyone who says they're the chosen one or they're above everybody else is so lost because
Yes.
nobody is better than anyone else. We had on the show Ingrid Hankala, who had the near-death experience and is guided
Yes.
by angels her whole life, just a beautiful woman. And she said at one point, she asked them, well, why is this happening to me? And they said, because you're special. And then they said, but so is everyone else.
Right.
They
Yes.
don't know it. And that's the key. And I think I might have mentioned this once before, Siri, when we were talking about when I've been working on myself since I was like 13 and started going to Alateen. I've said this before, love my parents, love my family, but was raised in an alcoholic home. If you're raised in an alcoholic home, violence, craziness, it affects you a lot. So I started going to Alateen when I was 13 years old. And so therapy, retreats, weekends, whatever. And I went to one therapist, I think I was like in my late 20s, maybe. New therapist, sat down, did my spiel. I have no idea what I even said, but she just kind of went, my God, Mary, I've never met anyone that hated themselves as much as you do. And I was like, what did I say? Like, I couldn't even tell you to this day what I said. I was just kind of talking, but that really stuck with me because it
Wow.
implanted in my head, like, do I hate myself? And the answer is yes, because I was trained through my religion, through, unfortunately, my very abusive surroundings to reject and hate myself. Sidebar, total forgiveness, worked on a lot of that. And by the time my parents passed, I love them tremendously. So grateful they were my parents, but that's a long story and not for here. But anyway, I was very well trained to hate myself. And this is kind of the core of what I'm trying to get at and why I'm saying I'm not promoting us all being victims, but I think we do have to acknowledge we are repeatedly victimized over and over and over as women, not just physically, which is 100% true. I mean, I'm sure you, like the rest of women, if they're being honest, can fill pages and pages with varying degrees of sexual assaults and improper sexual advances throughout our lives. And so this is kind of how we're taught to think of ourselves. So it's very hard to find that part of yourself that can finally say, wait a second, wait, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to stop stuffing my face with food to numb the pain or drowning myself in wine or whatever. those things are horrible. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes we just need those little things to get us through. But it's so important that we say, okay, I'm being inundated with messages that I'm second best. I have this some dirty original sin and have to like clean myself before I can present myself before this God in the sky.
Mhm.
And what I have found myself is none of that's true. And
Mhm.
I've also found nobody can give that to you, which is why
Mhm.
it's so important to be quiet and start questioning everything. Question
Mhm.
every message you're given, including the ones that are still going around in your head. Why do I feel that way? Because I guarantee you, there is no God in the sky that feels that way at all. And
Yeah.
what helps me is, I'm going to be quiet in a second, Siri, let you talk. I want to share something because it's such a huge thing for me to even wade into these waters of self-love and self-acceptance and being my own friend and advocate
Yeah.
is this stream of love. I've experienced enough in meditation to just you want to live there. You just
Yeah.
want to live there. It's like, oh my God, I'm okay. I'm really
Mm.
okay,
Mhm.
just as I
Mhm.
am. And I'm
Mhm.
beautiful and loved and all these things. And I see it as stepping into the stream of truth. I'm in
Yeah.
the stream of truth. And
Mm.
when all those thoughts come, now I try and stop them and say, I stepped out of the stream. Oh, I'm up on this shore again. It's cold here. I don't have a towel. I'm wet. And none of this is true.
Mhm.
None of it's true. And if you can get whatever visual works for you of either being in the stream of love and acceptance, I don't care if you're 100 pounds overweight. I don't care if you slept with 1,000 men. I don't care if you have 6 different kids from 6 different fathers. Guess what? Whatever this source is, does not care any of
Yeah.
those things at all. We have just been trained wrong. We've been trained to hate ourselves. And
Yeah.
it's our responsibility. Yes, we've been victimized over and over, but we have to acknowledge that. But it's our responsibility to begin to heal ourselves by questioning all these really hateful, damaging beliefs, which, sorry to say, a lot of them begin with a religious foundation.
Yeah, and that's something that I've journaled quite a bit. I do a lot of the automatic writing where you
Mhm.
just, you
I
just
do
let
that
your
too.
pen
It's
go.
very
And
helpful.
I've had some extremely powerful messages that say judgment and condemnation are a lie. They're an illusion that were created
Mhm.
by people. It has nothing to do with God. Because God is so ridiculously empathetic, watching us and understanding our situation and how limited we are in the scope of our understanding of the universe and the world. Of course, we're going to mess up. We're going to mess up bad. And there's so much grace and room for that. It's like watching a toddler put a square thing in a round hole and then get really frustrated and mad. No parent worth its spit would be mad about a kid not being able to do that, right? Um, I'm reading this book right now, The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek,
But
and
let me see. Will
it's
you hold it up again? Let's see it.
yeah, it's
The Bookwoman of Troublesome. Is it a novel?
it's a novel, and it's based off of some real situations in the 1930s in the South. There were bookwomen who were paid for by the New Deal, and they went to the most rural, impoverished areas to bring books. And they had these routes. And the story is also about a woman who, and this is true, kind of had a blue tinge to her skin because of a particular blood disorder that they was
Mhm.
undiagnosed, but because of it, she's considered colored and receives a lot of prejudice, and people don't want to touch her. And she's internalized so much self worthlessness. And it's painful to read. Like as a reader and like a mom, I'm reading this in the way she'll be she's literally starving, but she gives, like a good woman. She saves the piece of cheese and gives it away. And I'm like, is this supposed to be is this supposed to be like where I'm cheering for her? That she's literally fainting and on her route and making herself sick. I mean, I understand that she has compassion, but like, and then And then she starts to do something or someone calls her pretty and she chastises herself for being vain. And I just want to step through the book and go, the world you've internalized is sick. What the heck? Like, girl, and the thing is, I know it's a novel, but this is real on
Oh,
so
yeah.
many levels. And the fact that she can't possibly feel pretty or want to feel pretty or want to be treated well, that she as a woman can't claim when someone, tries to sexually assault her that that's actually a thing, right? Because the guy has more clout than her and she's just a blue. It's the amount of damage our world has done to us. And the reason I'm bringing this book up is in moments I read this book and I sort of feel like how like our guides or spirit or God must feel watching us internalize these messages of self-hatred and worthlessness. And because of our skin, because of our gender, because of our family, because of whatever, it's just all made up. It's all made up. And
Wait, pause right there.
yeah,
It's all made
it's
up.
all made
It's
up.
not true. This is one thing that I do the same thing when I meditate. I have the writing that I get some just incredible insights from the automatic writing channel.
Mhm.
I don't know, whatever you want to call it, your higher self. But one of the things that I got that came through to me was if anyone is preaching division, hatred, superiority, that is not coming from God.
Nope.
That is someone's personal agenda who wants control and power over you.
Yeah.
Because anyone who preaches those things wants control and power over you because they are benefiting in some way, which is usually through filling their pockets with your money.
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
the only truth is, and if you're Christian, that's Christian, but I think most religions are based on kindness, love, everyone's brothers and sisters, whatever.
Mhm.
We should all be equal. There is no hierarchy. We created hierarchy. It's
Yeah.
very amazing to think why people so much want hierarchy. They want someone above them. They want someone to tell them what to do. They want someone to follow. And I get that because when I first started this new spiritual journey away from traditional religion, when I was in my mid-30s, I've always been a reader, answers in books, read. And I would just go to back in the old days when they
Mhm.
had bookstores, and I would stand in front of like the mystical or spiritual section, whatever, and I just kind of be like,
Mm.
okay, please lead me to what'll help me, lead me to what'll help me. And if I pulled out a book, a lot often by Wayne Dyer, because he was a big preacher of self-reliance, like and had a great essay on self-reliance. But anyway, I would be like, no, and I'd put it back. I'd be like, I don't want to hear it's up to me because I can't trust me. Yes, I am.
Oh.
I want there to be a God in the sky that's going to rescue me from this hell I've created. I don't want to hear it's up to me. And that went on for a long time because it's easier. It's
Mhm.
easier to say there's a God in the sky that is making people suffer. Why doesn't God do something? I mean, that's just astounding. We're here. There's
Mhm.
billions of people on this planet. Why don't we do something instead of blaming this mysterious thing in the sky? You know what I mean? We don't want that responsibility. And when I had Angie Buchanan on, the pastor of a pagan church, she said this, which is true too. Women have to own up to the fact that in some ways it's been easier to have
Mm.
someone else in charge and we don't have to make any of the decisions. And sometimes it's easier to just stay in that victim role, like,
Yes.
oh, poor me. And maybe that's the only way we know how to get attention for ourselves is to just, oh yes, isn't he awful? Look at me. Or, well, I'd like to do this, but I can't, that it's really sick. It's very insidious, but it is
That
true. I'm not pointing
that's
fingers because I'd be looking in a mirror because I have been through that and sometimes still struggle with it.
Oh, I still struggle with it. I think doing something new and scary is always terrifying. I just recently signed up to be a to go through yoga certification training.
Right, right.
And
Are
it's
you a
something I've
teacher?
wanted to do for a long time. It's just never been right. The
Mhm.
schedule doesn't work. And I finally found a training I'm excited about, and the schedule works. And still at 3 a.m., I woke up and my 3 a.m. self, which is scared of everything, was like, what did we just do? What did we just do? This is a huge monetary investment. It's going to take up so much time. What are we going to do with it? And then in the daytime, as I'm journaling, this other part of me says, you get in this life, you get to do any degree, any certification, read any book, get on the plane and go anywhere. Like, do it, live your life and break free of these notions that you have in your head, but it's scary. And it's probably going to be scary till the day I die. But as long as my courage is the next word. I see my fear and I go, yes, it would be easier for me to stay where I am. Be easier for me to not take that next step, to not push a little harder, to not investigate inside and outside of myself. But there's another voice much stronger that says, but that's what we're here for.
Mhm.
That's the whole reason we're here, is to learn and see and do and be as much. And I get to determine. I'm the only one who gets to determine what my life is like. And I'm trying so hard to stop waiting for permission from anyone else to live the life that I want and to be the person that I wake up and I feel proud of and I like being with. And I love that journey. And I encourage anyone listening to just think, this is your life. There's literally no one else on this planet responsible for your life but you. This is your effing life. Do
Right.
with it what you want. And if you need permission, if you need a giant permission slip to float down from the heaven to say, live your life, here it is. Let it float down from the sky with a permission slip to say, do what you want, girl. Live your life. It's your life. The only thing you're going to regret are the things you didn't do.
Yep. Amen, sister. Amen. You said a mouthful there. You made me think of one of the biggest obstacles. It's a process I went through, but it's not completely gone. Sometimes I still do have these feelings, but knowing what I know now, but my kids are raised. I've been in the relationships, I've done all that. And I think, oh my God, why couldn't I have known this 30 years ago? Why couldn't I have known this when I was 20 years old and making these huge life decisions?
Mhm.
And and I have grieved horribly about that. And every once in a while, it still does come up, but that's okay. I let myself feel what I feel. Of course, it's especially as any mother. No, I mean, you adore your children, you do anything for them. And when you look back and go, oh my God, why did I do this? Why did I do that? But it is what it is. It happened. My,
Mhm.
my greatest, grandest desire is that as females, we all take each other's hands and say,
Mhm.
I hear you, sister. I
Mhm.
know this is difficult. I am here. I will help dry your tears. I will buoy you up when you're sinking. It's a tough journey. Nobody can take it for you, but we will be right by your side, cheering you on, telling you you're right. Question everything. Question everything. Question all these roles you've been told to play. Question all the truths you've been told are absolutely true.
Mhm.
Question all the lies you've been told about yourself.
Mhm.
Because if this was all true, and there really is some divine source of love and beauty that created all of this, some energy that's behind all this, then we definitely are doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Look around this world. That's all you have to look at to say, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
This can't be the way it's meant to be, because the proof is in the pudding. And
Yeah.
I absolutely believe all these hateful people that have all these platforms that are
Mhm.
spewing their poison on everybody. Imagine if they truly loved themselves and knew how precious they were, and that they were
Totally different.
created with intention.
Totally different. Yes.
Right? That's the
Yes.
key to everything. I always think that because I do, when I hear some of this hateful rhetoric being spewed, of course, I'm human and I might have a little bit of anger in me. I'm just saying, might be there. But that's the first reaction is, oh my God, shut up, stop. But then I think, how sad for you. Can you
Mhm.
imagine what happened to someone as a human being that they could watch two little children and their mother drown in a river? Can you imagine what happened to someone that can beat someone with poles and bats and whatever else they brought on January 6th and think they're doing a good thing? What kind
Mhm.
of poison you got running inside of you that ever justifies the abuse? And I have actually been with people that when January 6th came up, they were like, "Yes." So really watch that footage. And if you can watch that footage of that human suffering intentionally inflicted on people
Mhm.
and feel joy in your heart, man,
Mhm.
you know, I really hope someday you get quiet enough to hear the truth inside of you, which is that you are loved. You are beautiful just as you are. There is no judgment. Nobody's judging you.
Mhm.
Nobody's asking you to atone for some imagined sins you don't even know about, but were somehow born with. It's all bullshit.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
sorry, but it is toe to toe with anybody because you cannot tell me that the truth in your books is truer than what I find in my own soul when I'm alone with myself. Because if you believe, as you say, that God is within all of us, then this God is within me. This is what I'm being told. Prove
Mhm.
me wrong. You can't. You
Yeah.
can't.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you just said something so beautiful is that condemnation and judgment is such a sickness on our planet that we can look at other people doing what we find abhorrent and judge and condemn them. And I think it's so helpful for me, and something I've been practicing is when I see people acting crazy, I literally just say, that's what it is, that they're not right inside. And if someone's sick, like they're sneezing, we give them medicine and we want to make them well. But when somebody is disconnected from their heart and their soul and perpetrating awful things, we say, well, that's a bad person, rotten to their core. No, it's the same thing. There's something wrong with them and they need help, because deep underneath that is a well person, is a good, loving soul, just buried beneath whatever crap they've ingested. And so the only thing that is going to rid us of all this judgment, condemnation, hierarchy, violence is releasing the judgment, loving ourselves, and loving each other.
Amen. You said a mouthful there, sister. I want to close with just this quote by Glennon Doyle that I actually saw on
Mm,
something you posted, Siri,
yeah.
because it's really true. I think the key to the healing of women begins with rejecting that females are here to serve and that it's somehow sacred and holy and there's a God in the sky that loves us for being such good little girls, which makes me laugh every time I say that. So, Glennon Doyle. Selfless women make for an efficient society, but not a beautiful, true, or just one. When women lose themselves, the world loses its way. We do not need any more selfless women. What we need right now is more women who are full of themselves. A woman who is full of herself no longer internalizes the world's memos and expectations. A woman who is full of herself knows and trusts herself enough to say and do what must be done and lets the rest burn. That's Glennon Doyle, who
Yep.
gotta love Glennon Doyle.
Yep.
Okay, Siri, thank you once again. It's always so wonderful having you on. Please tell people where they can find out more about you.
Absolutely. You can go to siristrommen.com if you want to see what I'm up to. And also, I have a YouTube page of Siri Strommen, and you can watch some of my teachings there as well.
All right, till next time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Take care.